Hey, it is December 27th, and right now we are in between two holidays. The first we just experienced a couple days ago. So Merry Christmas to you and your family. I hope you got a ton of great gifts that you needed and hopefully a few things that you really wanted. But about 5 days from now, we're going to be celebrating a new holiday, something that most of us are really looking forward to, and that is the entry of 2021. Most of us can agree that 2020 it was hard, it was bad, it was tragic in some ways, and so many of us are looking forward to a brand new, fresh start. 2020 was hard for me in at least two ways. The first is I have a living memory of an accident that I had on my face. So this year, my son and I go mountain biking all the time, and in this one instance, I went off a jump that I have been on a bunch of different times, and I'm not sure exactly what happened because I don't remember. I lost 16 hours of my memory. So I go off this jump and something happens, maybe in the air or maybe when I land, and I bash my face against the ground. I cut open my face and I get a concussion. And so my son sees me, he wakes me up because I'm unconscious. I get back on my bike, I go down the hill, I meet Rachel in the Jeep, and she realizes very quickly that something is not right. In fact, every 30 seconds, my memory reset. I went back to 2016. I didn't know where I was, what year it was, who I was, how I got there. And it was this scary event that my family had to go through. And I still don't remember what happened. But it's an example, and this scar reminds me on my face that I was very close to a serious brain injury. I mean, I don't want to remember that, but I want to learn from it. And the second thing is that 2020 crushed me personally in a way that I did not see coming. I actually had a mental breakdown. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Maybe some of you have experienced this as a parent, as a coworker, as a leader, or just as a person, because 2020 was rife with challenges. I mean, as a leader here at this church, I have to make decisions that affect other people, and there's people who disagree and who agree, and the criticism, at least for me and Roy and for our church, was mounting, and that was weighing heavily on me. And then my job duties as a father, I felt like I wasn't spending enough time with my kids. Even though we were at home together, I could not give them the time that they needed. As a husband, I feel like I couldn't give the best of my time to my wife. I couldn't go out at restaurants and eat. I couldn't see people. I didn't get to come here on Sundays and see my church family. And it all just kept adding and adding and adding until one day I could not take it anymore. And I just broke down. It was a challenge, to say the least. And for many of us, we see 2021 as a fresh start, and we're looking forward to that. But in my opinion, if we go into the next year and don't bring what we have learned with us this year, the entirety of the year will be a waste. God tells us that we can persevere, that character and hope and perseverance is built through adversity. And to say this was an adverse year would be an understatement. Normally, we ask ourselves some questions in a normal year. So this is the question we often ask in a normal year. What do I want to do? What do I want to do today? What do I want to do with my weekend? What do I want to do after work? What do I want to do with my kids? Who do I want to see? What do I want to do? And it's based on our wants. And in a normal year, we probably get to do what we want. But we haven't gotten to do that, which means we've been frustrated. We've been angry. And so we've asked ourselves a different question, or been forced to. What can I do? This is kind of the question that we've been asking all 2020. And it's based on our worries. Can I go outside? Can I go see family members? Can I hug someone? Can I open my business back up? Can I spend this money, or should I be worried that no more is going to come in? What can I do? And for 2021, I want to ask a new question, a superior question. What should I do? And this is based on God's wisdom. What should I do in light of my circumstances, in light of everything that has happened to me, in light of everything that has happened to you this year? What can we learn from, maybe own, and maybe take with us into next year to make the next year better? How can we be better for it based on what has happened to us in 2020? And wisdom is pivotal. Think about it this way. One wise decision has the potential to keep you from many foolish ones. Sometimes just making one wise decision will help keep you from a myriad of decisions that may harm you. So with your finances, you may choose to put someone smarter than yourself, like I do, in charge of your finances, or to say, hey, help me understand how I can be wise. You've gone to school for that, or you're wise with your finances. Help me out. And maybe adding someone into the equation will help me, or maybe you, from making foolish decisions. Or maybe as we're parenting, maybe we go, man, what have you done? You've been through it. You've been a parent before I was, and your kids turned out great. Help me understand. Maybe you're mentored by someone else, and they help you not make some foolish decisions in parenting or in your marriage or as a leader. One wise decision has the potential to keep you from many foolish ones. Now, wisdom in the Bible is kind of an interesting topic. In fact, it's an interesting topic throughout history. It's actually kind of a religious term. In Hellenistic philosophy, Sophia was known as the goddess of wisdom. In Roman times, because they just steal everybody else's gods, it was known as the goddess Minerva. And in the Old Testament, wisdom is personified yet again as a woman. Now, it's interesting because we're not saying that wisdom is a separate God or a rival God. The Old Testament just talks about it in a way that says God is personal and knowable. And so they kind of give this personality to a characteristic of God, his wisdom. So it's not quite the same, but in olden times, people used to name their ships female names to make them relatable or personable. Today, we still do that with cars. We give cars personal names to kind of have an affinity with them. And so Solomon, the wisest guy who ever lived, personifies wisdom as a woman as well. And he helps us understand why wisdom is so important. Here's what he says in Proverbs 1:1-7. These are the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, and for receiving instruction, prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, and giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Now, here's his challenge. So, let the wise people listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and riddles of the wise. And the fear or awe of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. So Solomon is painting this picture of life. He's saying there are really only two options. You can walk in wisdom, or you can follow the fool. Solomon is helping us understand, like, God's ways are wise. They're based on wisdom. And you want to follow what he has already said, because when you walk in his ways, wisdom will be in your life. And your decisions, your actions, and what comes out of those will be far better than you could do on your own. Now, being called a fool is never a good thing. It's not a good thing now. It definitely wasn't a good thing in Old Testament times or in Jesus' day. An interesting way of thinking about a fool is this way. A fool is an empty-headed, silly person who doesn't want to learn from and listen to God. You probably know someone. Hopefully they are not sitting on the couch next to you. Do not elbow them. But have you ever said this or had someone say this to you? You just acted without thinking. Exactly, because there were no thoughts there in the first place to act from. So Solomon is pointing out, when you have wisdom in your mind, before you act, before you do something, wisdom will help you make the right action in your life. And we need that going into next year. So if that's what a fool is, what is wisdom? Well, wisdom is this. It's using past experiences, knowledge, and good judgment in the presence for a better future. So Solomon is essentially saying, look, there are people in your life who are farther ahead than you are. You should absolutely ask for their opinion. You should absolutely lean on their wisdom. They probably made some mistakes that you can avoid. So if you ask their opinion, they will help you avoid those mistakes. And when you do that in the present, when you continue to make wise decisions in your life, day by day, hour by hour, week by week, year by year, it starts to add up to a better future. And this is the reason so many of us are looking forward to 2021. We want a better future because our present and all of the past stuff that has happened in 2020 has not been what we have wanted it to be. So the personification of wisdom continues because Solomon now helps us understand that she is a woman who calls out to us. So this characteristic of God is positioned in strategic places in our lives. So here's what Solomon says. Out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. So Solomon is essentially saying, if you look for it, you will find her. If you look for God's wisdom, you will receive it. She raises her voice in the public square and on top of the wall, and she cries out. At the city gates, she makes her speech. Essentially, Solomon is saying she positions herself that anywhere you go in your life, you will have the opportunity to learn from her. You will be able to gain wisdom from people, obviously from God's scripture, and from God himself through the Holy Spirit. And so wisdom has positioned herself that she is accessible to you. But she has something to tell us. How long will you who are simple love your simple ways? I mean, it sounds a bit intimidating. Maybe it sounds offensive, but she's saying, look, if you're just going to be and do things your way, it's not going to go well. How long will you rest in that? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? How long will people shun the wisdom of God and do things their own way? Have you ever done that in your life? I definitely have done that. God has said something clear in his scripture, and I did the antithesis of it, and I paid for it. Or I just didn't include him in the decision in the first place. I didn't look for his wisdom in my life. And Solomon says, how long will fools hate knowledge? The empty-headed person does not lean on or glean from the experience, the wisdom, and the mistakes of other people. We could ask her question in a different way. How far can you get without the wisdom of God? Not very far. You can make some strides, you can be successful to some degree, but Solomon is painting this picture for us that is bleak without the wisdom of God. Sure, you'll have a portrait, but it would be far better, far more creative, far more exciting, far more adventuresome if you have the wisdom of God in your life. So I want to tell you some questions I want to ask myself going into 2021. So hopefully, like you, I want to learn from my mistakes. I want to learn from the times that I did not think through my decisions and my actions. I just want to learn from things that have happened to me last year. So I want to be better next year because of what happened this year. So I'm going to ask 5 questions of myself, and maybe these will be helpful for you. So questions that wisdom helps us ask. Here's the first one. What should I focus on now that I'm forced to? We are forced to deal with certain realities. Now that my kids are home, I am now forced to deal with the fact that I haven't been a good educational parent, and I want to do better at that. I maybe am now forced to, when I am at home, they don't actually get my presence. I don't know what this is for you. This is just what comes to mind to me. But now that I'm forced to be focused on something, what should I focus on? The second question is this: what should I drop that I never should have picked up? I mean, this is a big deal, especially if you have kids. Most of us, when asked, how are you doing? Most of us will say, I'm fine. I'm just busy. And COVID has kind of made sure that that wasn't a responsive answer that we now have. I mean, we're still busy, don't get me wrong. I mean, it seems like it takes twice as long to do everything right now. None of us would say that we have a ton of free time. That's not what I mean. Is that maybe there are actions and activities and habits and relationships or decisions that we have picked up that we never should have, that we absolutely need to drop. Maybe next year we need to be involved in less things. Maybe we need to say no to some things instead of saying yes. Maybe we need to jettison some relationships because they haven't been healthy for us, and because we've been away from them, we realize we are a healthier person now. And maybe we need to pick up some new habits as well. Number 3, who should I help that I didn't hear asking before? You know, when tragedy strikes, hopefully we look to others to help. Obviously, we're going to look at how do we help ourselves, how do we help our family, and then our purview expands, our neighbors, our church, our extended family members, our friends. And maybe before we didn't hear who needed help, but now we can. Maybe because we're in our neighborhood a little bit more. Maybe because we're fine with our job and we can go, someone else that I know is not fine in their finances or in their home or in their marriage or in their parenting. I need to help them out. And the 4th one is, how should I become better through this instead of becoming bitter because of all of this? It would be easy to sit here. It would be easy to go into 2021 with hopefully this idea of freshness, while also looking back and just saying some terrible things about what happens and realizing that, man, there were still a lot of good things that did happen in that year. But how do I become better through all of this? How do I persevere? How can my character and your character be built? And how can I go into the next year with renewed hope? How can I do that and not sit in the bitterness of all I wanted to do but could not? So the last thing I want to tell you, there will be times when you and I do not make wise decisions. It happens just about every week for me. So what happens when we do that? Because we can't be wise 100% of the time. Hopefully, we want to follow the wisdom of other people and ultimately the wisdom of God, because that will help us avoid mistakes. But sometimes in our life, we're not wise. And if it's bad or it's even foolishness, what happens is we can sin. We can sin against ourselves. We can sin against our people, our neighbors, our church members, our family members, and we can sin against God himself. So what happens when we do that? Well, Proverbs 16:6 helps us understand this dilemma. Through love and faithfulness, sin is atoned for. And through the fear of the Lord, evil is avoided. So that word atonement is for someone to pay for and atone for a wrong someone else has committed. So if I were to get into a car accident because I had done something wrong, I would have to pay or atone for the damage that I have caused someone else. And so when we're not wise, when we do not live by God's wisdom, we cause damage to ourselves, to other people, and ultimately to God. And someone has to pay for that, and it is God himself. He chose to do that 2,000 years ago through his son, Jesus Christ, on the cross. So wisdom will help us avoid future sin. And God's love and faithfulness has paid for our current and past and any future sins that we may commit. So here's my invitation to you. I hope that you want to be a wiser, better person in 2021. We have a series called The Art of Adulting that we would love for you to tune into. It will be starting in January next Sunday, and we're going to help you understand how to be wise. And so you know what's coming up. We're going to help you understand, how should I be wise in my finances? We're going to talk about, it's more important to talk about how to think than what to think. That adults pre-decide decisions before they actually need them. And so those are just a few of the topics that we're going to cover. So we hope you'll join us next Sunday for the Art of Adulting series. I hope you have a great Christmas. I hope you have a happy new year, and we'll see you in January.